Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the EBI Seminar Series on graduate students. I'm joined today by Jude Edwards, a first-year PhD student studying environmental microbiology here at UC Berkeley. Hi, Jude. How are you? How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you're studying in your grad program here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently a first year, so I haven't yet decided on the lab that I'm going to be working in. During my PhD, I'm doing rotations, and I'm in the middle of rotation two. But broadly, my interests are in microbial interactions in the environment. So that spans a lot of different topics, but I'm interested in like host pathogen interactions, in like nutrient competition, stuff like that.
Okay, perfect. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the transition between going from undergrad to grad school. I understand that you went to UC Berkeley for your undergrad as well. So, what was it that made you want to stay in Berkeley for your PhD?
Yeah, so I actually started out my application process for grad school thinking that I was going to leave Berkeley. And the only reason that I applied is because the department that I'm in right now, plant and microbial bio, is really the best in the world for what I want to do, which is environmental microbiology. And yeah, so I started out assuming that I was going to leave. And then as I visited other schools and even got in other places and I was weighing my options, it really came down to the depth and breadth of research in this department, which is quite outstanding. And because there are so many resources at Berkeley, you really don't have a lot that's kind of like narrowing the scope of your research. You can do whatever you want. And so I decided to stay at Berkeley because of the science and also because of the department.
Okay, absolutely. So, when you say resources, could you specify a little bit by what you mean by that? Is it the lab, like technologies and stuff that you can refer to? What are these resources?
Yeah, totally. So it's both the technologies and the facilities that we have on campus. So we have access to microscopes and sequencing facilities that are really hard to come by. If you're at another school, you might have to like outsource your work. You might have to send it to a company. You might have to travel in order to do analysis on your work. But here it's all pretty much in-house and it's really easy to find those resources. But I also mean resources in terms of people. I think being in a place surrounded by people who are all doing really cool, different research is really important. For me as an undergrad, it was really inspiring. And now as a graduate student, I see how much potential there is to connect and collaborate with other people in such a great community here at Berkeley.
Okay, yeah. So that all absolutely speaks to the quality of like staying here in Berkeley, but you originally said that you were planning on going elsewhere. So would you say that you were expecting to go elsewhere? How common is it to go to another university versus staying at the same university you are in undergrad?
Yeah, so it is strongly recommended in academia that you change kind of schools or universities for every stage. And so I was recommended by advisors to go somewhere else for graduate school because that's kind of the best thing you can do as a young scientist is to go somewhere new and like keep expanding your horizons, meet new people, learn about new ways of approaching science. But I found that because Berkeley has such diverse research, that I was still able to feel like I would continue learning and growing here at Berkeley, even though I've already been here for 5 years. So here we go, another five.
Leads me to my next question. Did you at all get sick of Berkeley, or do you think you'll get sick of Berkeley just being in the same place? I mean, it's a lovely campus, but do you at all get tired of just staying at the same place?
Yeah, definitely. I am also from the Bay Area, and so I've never lived anywhere else, which is a blessing and a curse because this is an amazing place, but it's also important to go and meet new people and try new things. I definitely have had a lot of periods where I feel like I really need to leave and get out. But I think that that has been balanced out by my excitement and curiosity that I still have. And I'm now in my entering my 6th year at Berkeley, and I still feel like am learning new things and I'm meeting new people. And I think that's what's kind of exciting about grad school is like this isn't just specific to Berkeley. It could be like at any school, but I don't think you should stay somewhere if you feel intellectually stuck. But that's important to keep in the context of the school and the lab that you're working in, because I've definitely felt stuck in the lab environments that I've been in, but then I've gone out and I've found like new lab environments and new people to talk to. And so making sure that you feel like at an early stage in your academic career that you are like still curious and growing and like have room to grow is really important. That was kind of tangential, really out there, but
No, that's great advice. Thank you for sharing. So, shifting gears a little bit, I understand that you also took a gap year in between your undergrad and your grad school. What did you do during this time?
yeah, so gap year might be a misleading term because I was working. And I think sometimes when people think of gap years, they think like you're traveling, you're doing something for fun. I think if you're interested in a track to go to get a PhD, then using time in between college and grad school to actually try out the work that you would be doing in your PhD is really useful. And so I worked as a lab technician also at Berkeley, but in a lab that I hadn't worked in before. So in undergrad, I worked in 2 labs, one for 2 years and then one briefly at the end of my senior year. Um, and then this third lab, I joined as a technician after about like a few weeks after I graduated. And I in my research project, got to work on microbial interactions in a system that I didn't expect to work in before, which was with algae. And I had only ever worked with like microbes before that were not photosynthetic. And working with algae is like working with little plants, basically, which was really fun. And I learned a lot. And I think most importantly, I had really incredible mentors who took the time to get invested in me, especially because I did my applications just a few months after joining the lab. And really critically, they helped me with my NSF GRFP application, which I submitted, I guess, in the fall of that year. And having them there and having people who were like holding me accountable to deadlines and were like reading over my essays was really, really important. They also really empowered me to just feel like I was doing something important and that like my ideas were worth listening to. And I know that a lot of people don't get an opportunity to feel like that before going to grad school. But yeah, I would recommend taking a gap year and using it to actually like test out if doing research full time is for you. Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, cool, I'll go get a PhD. But the day-to-day work, the grind is actually something you have to enjoy, I think at least a little bit, because you're going to be doing it for a really long time. So if you don't like the day-to-day, then it's probably worth looking into other options.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the NSF GRFP?
Sure. Yeah. So the NSF GRFP is a fellowship program from the National Science Foundation, which you can apply to before starting graduate school or when you're in graduate school. But once you're in graduate school, you can only apply once. So if you get denied then you don't get to reapply. But if you apply before you start grad school, that's basically your freebie year. So you can apply again after that, even if you get rejected. And this is a fellowship which funds you for 3 out of 5 years in grad school. And it makes a big difference, especially if you're starting in a program where the stipend is pretty low or you don't know if there's guaranteed funding through your lab, which is not something that I ended up needing to worry about at Berkeley, but it's definitely something that I was strongly recommended to apply to. And I would also highly recommend to others. There are 2 components of the application. The first is a personal statement. And so it's basically the same essay that you write for all of your other graduate school applications. So once you've got that written in a 3-page format, you can take parts of it and use them for other applications. And the deadline for NSF is earlier than other applications. So you get that work out of the way. And then the second half, after the personal statement, is a research statement where basically you're coming up with a plan of something that you would do in graduate school if, you were starting out a new project, something that you hadn't worked on before. And you do have to be realistic about like what you think you can get done in 5 years. But I think it's a really good exercise to kind of play out like asking yourself why you care about certain things and do they matter to other people. But the questions in the NSF GRFP are the same kinds of questions you'll get in the interview process for grad schools. So preparing for that ahead of time is really useful tool. And you never know if you'll get it or not. But even if you don't, you've still got a lot of work out of the way early. And you've started preparing yourself for the other parts of the grad process.
Okay, that's again such great advice. Um, so because you went from undergrad in Berkeley and then a lab tech in Berkeley and then back to grad school in Berkeley, what was this transition like going from academia to industry and back to academia? Was that at all hard to make that transition between the two?
So my tech job was in an academic lab. So I've never worked in industry, but I can speak to looking for a job in industry. When I was a senior at Berkeley, I thought that I might want to work in industry. And so I started doing a lot of outreach and informational interviews with people. And I think I did like 20 to 30 informational interviews in my senior spring because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know whether I wanted to do industry or work in an academic lab. And it's definitely, as a senior, it's really stressful to try to find a job if you don't know that you're going into grad school. And so I ended up getting kind of lucky that one of my professors had an opening in her lab and was looking for a technician, and that I was a good fit for that. But talking to people in industry was really, I think, interesting and important for me because I got that perspective without necessarily like actually trying it out. I also did interviews for an internship at a biotech company that I was really interested in working in. And I think I got to around like 4, and then they offered me the internship. But I think it was really good practice like for grad applications to actually go through that process because it was in a way kind of similar, like a condensed version. So I was being asked about like what my research was about, why it was important, what experiments I did and why I did them. And as an undergrad, sometimes I think if you have a mentor who's just telling you to do something, you like take it all for granted and you say like, of course that's the next step because that's what they told me to do, but you don't actually think about it. And so going through that process was also kind of valuable. So I would really say broadly, my best advice would be try everything out and talk to as many people as possible and ask them hard questions like, would you go back and change what you did? What would you do differently? What do you like? What do you not like about your day-to-day work? Stuff like that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great note to end on. I think it's something that the undergrads watching can really take from. So that does it for all of our questions. Thank you so much for joining us, Jude. Myself and everyone at the EBI wish you the best of luck on all your future years at your PhD program. And I hope that you find a good lab to work in. And yes, we thank you so much for coming out and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for checking out the EBI seminar series on graduate students and their experiences. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more content on graduate programs. Be sure to follow along for future installments or check out our previous series and explore our social media, which are all linked in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you next time.